Very long day. No, I was looking at the light. We probably want that off for the invocation and the pledge.
We usually leave it on.
Do we? Okay. So with that, I'm going to ask that we stand for invocation and pledge allegiance. And at first, I'd like to just take a moment of silence in respect to what's going on in the Middle East. Gracious Heavenly Father, we say thank you for another beautiful day in Washington County. Thank you for the opportunity to serve, to give of ourselves, to serve others in our community. We thank you for the agenda items that we have today, that we can deliberate and be collaborative and work together to do what is best for our community. Lead, guide, and direct us, I pray in thy name. Amen. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and good morning again. We'll move right into approval of the minutes from September the 26th. Is that correct?
Motion to approve.
Motion and second to approve as submitted. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioners' comments, reports. Mr. Wagner, you want to go first?
Good morning. Welcome everybody here. Us Chief Kiefer, Paul Fry. Got all the big shots here today. So, a lot went on the last couple of weeks. We didn't have a meeting last week. I'll just briefly say a few things that I got to participate in. I want to thank staff, all the first responders that were there, the volunteers at the emergency airport disaster drill, pouring down rain. We had volunteers laying on the ramp, pretending like, doing the part of, it was just a well run, doing the part of being injured and being triaged. It was a very interesting event to be at, to watch how we handle a potentially disaster at the airport, or anywhere really. I guess you carry that over to anywhere. We attended we had four detention center officers who retired. I wanted to thank them for their years of service. I think a lot of them were in their 30-year range. I want to thank them. It's a hard job at the detention center. I've been out there and took tours and got locked in some bad pods just to show me how bad it was, and it's not a fun place to be. MDOT came and met us at the new training center. That was a constructive meeting. Of course, we plead I-81 expansion, the phases that are yet to be completed or in planning. So I think they listened. We gave it everything we have, and the staff was excellent. It presented that, Scott Hobbs and everybody there, staff that did present. And the training center was a great setting for that. Children's Village received money, $50,000 from T-Mobile. It was Hometown Grant, I think it was called, but that was good. It really helped Children's Village out there. Certainty added 157,000 square feet so they could produce, could enhance shipping and construction and insulation products that they do. That was a nice addition. And last but not least, I won't mention, there were some water main breaks. I think Jeff went to some of them, actually. I'll let him talk about that for staff. And last but not least, the 104th annual meeting of Chamber of Commerce, Paul Fry here. I'm going to give you a plug. It was a very nice, congratulations to Dwight Clark, who Mike Radiker, who served well in 2023, has passed the gavel in the chair to Dwight Clark for 2024. Well attended. Paul, you and your staff did a wonderful job. It was smooth, and it's just 104 years is amazing, actually. Yeah, you just don't think about.
Have you been in charge for all 100 or close to it?
Oh,
90.
Yeah.
You're young for your age.
So, yeah, it's scary. 104 years, a long time. It's sort of eye-opening for me that, I'm 73, so, I know Chamber's been around at least that long, but to go beyond that. So, but anyway, that's all I have. Thank you.
Commissioner Kiefer?
Yeah, just one quick comment. I had an opportunity to attend an event. It was a birthday celebration, nothing official, but it was at the Maryland Theater. And while I was there, there were some people that were mentioning they traveled to Hagerstown from North Carolina just to attend the concert. It was a Billy Ocean concert. It was a great event that we're able to bring names like that here locally. So it's nice to see the investment that taxpayers made, our government made a contribution to that. It's nice to see that come to fruition and bringing people out. It was a good crowd, and I'm sure those people stayed at a hotel locally, maybe ate locally. I'm sure they did. And it's nice to see that, how that's come full circle. So that was nice to see people from far away, and I think North Carolina is rather far away, to come just for an event like that. That was nice. So
I think I saw a video, it might have been yours, Wayne. Billy Ocean still has it, doesn't he?
yeah, I don't think I shared any videos or took any video,
Somebody had
but
a video of Billy Ocean.
yeah, he did a good job. Yeah. Now, when he spoke, I had a little bit of difficulty understanding his English accent, but when he sang, it was perfect. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Harvey?
Yeah, thank you, President Barr, and I endorse the comments by Randy, all the activities and events, and appreciate everyone that's been going to all of those events, especially John and Jeff. They make a lot of the events around the county, more than me. I think everyone here knows that I've spent most of my career working in the Middle East and involved in the counterterrorism fights, and I have a lot of friends and colleagues over there, including in the Israeli Defense Forces. And I'm just going to make a quick comment about the situation there, because we had a wake-up call over the weekend that there is true evil in the world. Hamas is a ISIS-like evil actor on the world stage. And we should all be thinking and praying for the people of Israel, because the butchery there has been horrific at a scale far beyond what we suffered on 9/11 if you compare the two countries. We're going to probably see 2,000 or 3,000 dead in Israel once they get through recovering all the bodies. Hamas epitomizes ISIS-like evil, as I said, killing babies, slitting the throats of young children, executing children in front of their parents, beheading people live on TV. It's horrific, and it's unimaginable. We need to pray and have those people who have suffered, and the families and friends and the nation of Israel in our minds as we go forward. And I want to remind everyone here that if there's any doubt, Hamas does not want peace. They do not want to regain territory. They said again yesterday, as they've said month after month, year after year, that their goal is to wipe out and exterminate not just the state of Israel, but the Jewish people and Christians. You can look at it on YouTube. You can't negotiate with evil. You can't negotiate with someone who wants to kill you. You can't negotiate with Hitler. There are some wars that are worth fighting for, and to exterminate evil is one of those goals that we should all think about. I will just, say, from the Lord comes deliverance, and may the blessing be on your people. Let those who love the Lord hate evil. Let them hate evil. And that's all I have to say on that. I appreciate you bearing with me on that. Only one other comment. Today is Real Women's Day. Real Women's Day. We do have a Women's History Month, but Real Women's Day is to celebrate the accomplishments and overcoming of obstacles by real women, meaning women who actually have 2 X chromosomes, okay, and have the bodily parts of a woman, ovary, etc. Women's History Month celebrated glorifying pretenders of women, people who identified as women, but they weren't real women. And this movement is attacking women's rights, undermining Title IX, and there is a need for a women's rights legislation that protects real women, girls in sports, women in sports, and recognition for their service and what they contribute. And as a father of 4 girls, 2 adult women now, and 2 young girls, 1 who's in the military, 1 who's a business lady, and 2 that are still at home with me. I think it's incredibly important that we fight for the rights of girls and women. So with that, I end, sir.
Thank you. Commissioner Klein?
Yes, good morning, everyone. I do want to piggyback on Wayne's comments. It was 4 years ago today that we had the groundbreaking at the Maryland Theater downtown. Governor Hogan was here, and we all had the shovels, and it was a worthwhile investment into downtown Hagerstown. And then on October 6, 2013 was the ribbon cutting and open of the library in downtown, another great investment by all to help create downtown and build up Hagerstown and Washington County. I do want to bring attention to county employees, Mark Bradshaw and Jimmy Hastings and his crew. On Saturday night, they were at a force main breakdown on Route 34 near Keedysburg. I believe they finished up at 1:30 in the morning. So I want a special thanks to them and all our county employees who are at our service at all times of the day. Next, I want to bring up that I also briefly went out to the airport emergency drill, and the most important thing to say about that our emergency responders are always training. They're not always sitting around the station just waiting on a call. They're always training to serve us and to help protect themselves with better ways of coming back home. I also attended the retirement ceremony at the detention center. Congratulations to all those guys and their time that they put in. I also attended the MDOT meeting, and of course, my 13th year in a row pleading for I-81 to be widened, repaired, the money for the funds to come in, and let's hope they heard us this time, and perhaps the last phase of 81 can be funded in this upcoming legislature. I also attended Children's Village. They did receive that $50,000 grant from T-Mobile. I want to thank all the Children's Village people and their sponsor, and the school board is a big supporter of Children's Village. I also went down to the World Heritage Museum Apple Fest over the weekend. They had all their museums open. If you ever have a chance and want a nice Saturday afternoon to walk through all the museums and look at the agricultural and automobile history of Washington County. And I did attend the groundbreaking at CertainTeed for their new facility, shipping, receiving, and manufacturing plant out there in Governor's Lane Boulevard. CertainTeed's been in the Williamsport community over 50 years, quietly being in the Williamsport area, and behind the scenes effort that they help with our charities and nonprofits. They do it very quietly but not unnoticed. And I attended the 80th anniversary of the Sharpsburg Fire Company instead of going to the chamber event. I apologize, but I wanted to make sure we had some representation. One of the most interesting parts about their anniversary celebration was several of the people stood up and told the old stories of how the fire company came to being. And they, at one time, had to climb a telephone pole to answer the phone to find out where the call was. Just like off of Green Acres, if you know what I'm talking about. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Klein. Good morning, everyone. It's good to be back in not only the United States, but Washington County. And for the record of the minutes, the vote for the approval of the September 26 minutes should be recorded as 4-0. I need to abstain because I was not at the September 26th meeting. I was traveling over in Europe and had a wonderful time. It's good to be home. Number of things. I also attended the retirement luncheon for 4 of the deputies and officers at the detention center, and I also would like to comment on the awesome tasks that they have at times, the things they deal with, the nature of their employment, and hats off to them for the many years of service that they serve this community. Couple other items. I attended the MDOT tour meeting last Thursday, and that was, I think, a good meeting. It was, once again, a rally cry to our state leaders that the importance of funding 81 quickly, soon, expedite it, please. I've even talked to the governor personally twice regarding 81 and our plea for expedited engineering and study and ultimately making hundreds of millions of dollars of correction to a very important thoroughfare in our community. Something, Commissioner Klein, you forgot. You and I were at the Dargan Fire Hall breakfast Saturday morning, and if you want a good breakfast, a fantastic breakfast, meet us next month down there at Dargan. You might know the date, but I guess it's the first Saturday in.
They have something going on down there every weekend.
Anyway, it was hats off to the volunteers there at the Dargan Fire Hall. They put on a mean breakfast. So if you can, put that on your schedule. It's well worth the trip down there, and good food, good fellowship, and a nice time. So yesterday afternoon, Easter Seals had their ribbon cutting, groundbreaking, if you will, of their new digs over on First Street, 700 First Street. $1 million transformation to a building that was, I think, falling into disrepair. And it is a nice facility, and it's amazing what they do for citizens of our community. So hats off to all the hard work and everyone that was involved and continues to be involved with the Easter Seals. One other thing, that was a major event, I guess it was on, I don't know what day it was, Thursday or Friday, Go for Bold, the healthy living, where there's a goal in our community through the health department in Meredith and a number of other entities to lose 1 million pounds. And they were all excited at the first year annual celebration. I think they've recorded 100,000 pounds in the first year. So they're off and running. It's a good program, and the community partnership with the health department, Meredith, a number of other, many of the nonprofits in our community, county government, the school board, the city, the list of partners are completely on the backside of this brochure, and I don't know, there must be at least, 50 or 60 partnerships that are part of that Go for Bold. So hats off to them. Keep up the good work. A healthy community is obviously a very good thing. It speaks well for our community. It speaks well for employment. It speaks well for just interaction between all the partners and the betterment of our community. So I think that's about it.
Yeah, I forgot one thing, John.
Please.
Tim Kirchhoff reminded me, he just walked in Greater Hagerstown. I attended, now I'm only mentioning, there's a lot of great homecomings, but I attended North High's homecoming the other week.
Didn't Williamsport beat them?
So my grandson plays on that team, and his son, Luke, is the star quarterback. Him and his receiver, Ryder Thompson, right? Johnson, yeah, they set about every record you could set this year. And nothing against Williamsport, because I lived there and I'm all about it. But North High is my alma mater. And they set every record. Congratulations, Jim, on your son and Ryder Johnson for setting all those records. I think they're new records. Yeah, county records for eight touchdowns. 6 for Ryder and 8 for, yeah. So it was a high-scoring game. But I didn't mention that because you walked in, Jim, and I'm not sucking up, but it's when you set records, it's worth mentioning. So anyway.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anything we've forgotten? Very good. Thank you. Staff comments. Michelle Gordon.
Yes. I did attend the CertainTeed warehouse expansion groundbreaking in Williamsport. They did announce a $28 million expansion of their siding facility to improve production and shipping capacity. I also attended the 104th annual meeting of the Chamber of Commerce. I took a tour of about half of our wastewater and water facilities. I really enjoyed meeting our employees. They're very passionate about their work, and I really enjoyed seeing how excited they were and how excited they are about their jobs. I attended the Chamber Eggs and Issues event where they discussed the Time to Care Act and family and medical leave insurance. I also attended the MDOT Consolidated Transportation Program Tour meeting where state, county, and local officials outlined our transportation priorities for Washington County. I'd also like to thank Scott, Monica, and the staff and engineering for coordinating this event. I'd like to thank employees in water quality and our airport for addressing emergency issues that arose in the after-hours times as well as on the weekends over the last 2 weeks. They really rose to the occasion, and it's just exciting to see our employees in action. I attended the airport emergency disaster drill at the Hagerstown Regional Airport. It was a very cold and rainy day, so I'd like to extend a big thank you to all of our community members who volunteered as victims and all of our first responders from county to volunteer departments who participated in this learning experience. I was extremely impressed with the outpouring of work that they had. The next comprehensive plan meeting is scheduled for tonight in Smithsburg at 6 p.m. Our next meeting is October the 17th. And I'd also like to make the commission aware of some changes that we made to our prescription plan coverage for employees. We go through data to see what prescriptions and conditions are driving our costs on an annual basis with CBIZ. They provide us with opportunities that we can choose to implement to help contain costs. The following programs will be implemented, and programs will require a 60-day implementation period. They're going to apply Smart Logic for anti-diabetics. With this turned on, CVS Caremark will review claims history for those with prescriptions, with the prescription, to see if the patient has been on the anti-diabetic therapy in the past. If they have past use for anti-diabetics, the prescription will be dispensed as normal with no interruption. If the patient has no history of anti-diabetic therapy, the patient will require prior authorization to be completed by a physician with CVS Caremark. If the prior authorization is approved, the prescription will be dispensed. What we're trying to combat is that medications like Ozempic, although they are FDA approved for diabetics, they are not FDA approved for weight loss therapy. Additionally, our health insurance plan does not cover weight loss therapy. We're seeing a growing number of medications being used for off-label for weight loss, and this is driving our cost higher. So it's something that we need to correct. Second enhancement to our prescription plan will be implementing enhancements of specialty guideline management for rheumatoid arthritis. This will only impact new users. Anyone currently on our plan using the medication will not be affected. Those specialty medications, there will not be any immediate savings since it does not affect any current users, but the goal is to save money in the future. And the last change to our prescription plan is implementing enhanced specialty guidelines management for atopic dermatitis. We currently do not have any employees who are using this, so it doesn't impact any current employees. And similar to the other two changes, the individual would need to go through steps prior to being able to fill certain specialty medications. And I just wanted to make sure that our employees and the board is aware of those changes to our prescription plan. That's everything that I have.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Next is Kelsey Mace. Budget adjustment.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kelsey Mace, Interim Chief Financial Officer. This morning, I'm seeking approval of a budget adjustment in the amount of $73,090 for the Hagerstown Eastern Panhandle Metropolitan Planning Organization. There has been an increase in the MDOT planning grant for FY24 of $65,780. It requires a 10% local match of $7,310, which will be drawn from HETMO's fund balance. Are there any questions?
What's the amount again?
So the total budget adjustment is $73,090. The local impact is $7,310.
Consensus or a vote?
I need a vote for approval.
Yes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion is second to approve as submitted. All in favor by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Same sign. Thank you.
Thank you.
While we're still under citizen, or staff comments, one thing I did overlook this morning, and thank you, Michelle, for kind of reminding me, I always have an upcoming events list, and I think the first item is tonight, which has already been mentioned, the comprehensive plan meeting out at Smithsburg at 21 West Water Street. Number of items here. Grand opening of Chick-fil-A on Sharpsburg Pike. A major investment in this community is tomorrow morning at 7:30 a.m. My understanding is when it was posted online, within an hour, they were overwhelmed with the folks that wanted to participate, so
Or get there at 5 o'clock.
yeah, my understanding is that area of Sharpsburg Pike tomorrow morning may be kind of crazy.
Was it like a free chicken sandwich or something? or-
I'm not sure what all they're promising, but I can assure you that it's going to be a traffic jam. So,
First 100 people, okay.
next item is community overdose action, town hall series, tomorrow at 6:30 PM at USMH, the Hospitality Center. The next item is our 2023 Business Summit, Hagerstown Community College, Thursday, October the 12th. The next item is Starry Night for Kids' Sake, Big Brothers and Big Sisters, Thursday, October 12th at 5:30 PM at Cortland Mansion. There's also the ribbon cutting for the Williamsport High School Aviation Program, obviously at Williamsport High School. That's on Friday, the 13th at 2:30 in the afternoon. Wow, we're busy in our community. Washington County Farm Bureau, 100th Annual Banquet, special milestone, Friday, October 13th, 5:30 PM down at the Fairplay Fire Hall. Next item is Manor House Builders, grand opening, Saturday, October 14th at noon. That's at Delight Drive in Hagerstown. Another item is the BMX grand opening ceremony at Fairgrounds Park BMX track, Saturday, the 14th at 11 a.m. And finally, next Tuesday, the 17th, is our evening commissioners meeting, 6 p.m. Town Hall in Clear Spring. So just everyone keep those on your schedules, please. With that, we'll move right into citizens' participation, and I'd like to just once again read and maybe emphasize the criteria, the agenda for citizens' participation. And this is an opportunity for citizens, and I want to make that emphasize, for citizens, which in my mind means citizens of Washington County, to comment about an issue or issues of county practices and interests. This is not an interactive dialogue or question and answer session. It is solely time to hear citizens' comments. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less, and please state your name and address for the record. Thank you. So, do we have anyone for citizens' comments this morning? Morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for your service to the community. My name is Stephanie Phillips, a.k.a. Schlepo. My address is on file, the mailing address. First, I'd like to comment on the Harvest Hoedown in Williamsport. It seemed very well attended and successful. This is a really important drive for the local food bank. 2, if you consider county statewide neighborhood watch promotion and participation, it should be done by clustered school districts where children already know their peers and regular assigned, proactive, protecting, and serving law enforcement, and can become familiar with rotating officers. Many precincts have found by regularly shuffling the deck of county state officers can help with team building, offer some protections from being leveraged into criminal element, and help us be better prepared in events affecting large and regional areas. A themed T-shirt for the little people. In an emergency, we are not scared because our community is well prepared. I think we mentioned that before, possibly in cooperation with the Red Cross. I recently suggested to the Discovery Station to consider joining the Citizens Emergency Preparedness Day as a vendor if it resumes. I've only attended one protest in my life. It was sponsored by them. The topic was human trafficking. It was a silent walk through the main part of town. A few people carried signs prepared by the organizers that explained what we were doing. Participants were spaced 6 feet apart, and the directions and security were very good. No, I think it's really important for the youth to understand once they turn 18 years old, their parents' legal rights and responsibility to advocate for their security is somewhat diminished. So therefore, the 17 to 18-year-old age is extremely vulnerable. Please take time to get to know people. And the best part about COVID, I think it taught us all to stand somewhat distanced, 3 feet. If someone gets combative, 6 feet is even better in terms of not getting hurt. And lastly, I would just like to say, in terms of national emergency, I know I heard one of you speak a while back that we don't run a large surplus in finance. And I do know that our streaming live information is done through third-party vendors of YouTube and Facebook. In a national emergency, it might be good to lobby when you go out to Annapolis to make sure, and I hope is already in place, to take control of all of our communications directly. My family's long been challenged with intelligence community, and when I go to see the Federal Communications Commission, I will speak not just on behalf of my family, but all communications in our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips. Anyone else, citizens' participation?
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Mary Herringa, and I'm here today on behalf of the Washington County Teachers Association, which is located at 18047 Oak Ridge Drive in Hagerstown. I'm here today to speak on the $25 million of excess revenue. To recruit and retain high-quality educators, we need to improve salaries and decrease workload. According to a recent study by Education Week, on average, teachers work 15 uncontracted hours per week, 12 of which are unpaid. This is 7 more hours than another average worker. Most of the unpaid extra work are for things like responding to parent or student emails at all hours, grading on the weekends, and lesson planning late into the night. At the end of September, the Economic Policy Institute released its latest findings on teacher salaries. On average, teachers make 26.4% less than other similarly educated professionals. This is the lowest level since 1960. In Maryland, the average is 25.8%. In 1996, teachers earned 93.9 cents on the dollar compared to other professions. Today, that amount has dropped to 73.6 cents. Every year, we lose teachers to neighboring counties and states because of the difference in salary. But it's not all about salary. That's just one piece of the puzzle. A mid-year increase would also help support our education support professionals such as paraeducators, bus drivers, safety and security personnel, food service workers, custodians, and more. Our schools don't run without them. We are facing an educator shortage in our country and in our community. Where there used to be dozens of applicants for an open position, there are now 1 or 2 and sometimes none. A world-class public educational system can't happen without the best and the brightest leading our classrooms. We know that a strong community doesn't happen without strong public education. It's been over a decade since the county has funded the district's proposed budget. Over the past 3 years, the commissioners have spent excess revenue funds on salary adjustments for the sheriff's office and other county employees. And I'm not saying this was wrong or that these groups didn't deserve an increase in salary, because of course they deserve it. On December 1st, 2020, the commissioners, which included current commissioners Wagner, Klein, and Kiefer, unanimously approved a 2.5% step increase and a 1% cost of living increase for the county, along with a 15% increase for the sheriff's salary. On December 7th, 2021, the same commissioners approved an increase of almost $3 million for the salary of those working in the sheriff's department. And just last year, on December 13th, 2022, a mid-year salary adjustment of 9.5% for cost of living was made for county employees. Again, this passed unanimously, with all 5 of you voting in favor. Meanwhile, over the past 4 years, the starting salary for a teacher with a bachelor's degree in Washington County has increased by only 4%. This is in addition to high rates of inflation, increasing healthcare costs, additional duties and responsibilities, challenging student behaviors, new curriculums, and a pandemic. Our educators deserve more so they can give our students more. I strongly urge you to supply the school district and our community's future with a mid-year budget adjustment. Thank you.
Anyone else, citizens' participation this morning? Last call? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to Washington County Community Coalition, recap of 2023, request for support in 2024. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. Jim's handing around an updated paper since the packet went out, and that's for our agenda for 2024. So we come here, number one, to thank the commissioners for the support over the many years we've been doing this, and also for the staff coming down as vendors and showing off what we're doing here in Washington County from an economic development perspective. We're going into our 19th year as a community coalition, and it was mentioned earlier some of the benefits over the years, including the Maryland Theater expansion, the downtown library, and the I-81 improvements that so far have happened. Again, that's all as a result of our work together as a coalition. When we go to Annapolis, we're with one message. We are successful because of that. We hear lots of good feedback that the community comes and talks as a county, as partners. We wanted to discuss some of the success in 2023, and then Jim will look at 2024. Transportation was mentioned, I-81. We did successfully keep the $100 million that Governor Hogan put into the CTP. And so that's going to be put into use here to expand I-81 from West Virginia up to Exit 5, and we'll work on the rest of the I-81 in the coming year. The Route 11 bridge relocation, town of Williamsport, we got $1 million in funding for a study of relocating that bridge, what that's going to mean, and that's going to be a big project if that goes through. Also, HCC got some money for an MSA study, $125,000 to look at their facilities, to look at the improvements needed. And also for the county, $2.25 million in the capital budget. And again, that's for the public safety training building, apparatus operator, defensive driving track. Lastly, for Douglas Bass Museum in Boonesboro, $200,000 in a bond bill to help fund that project. So we had success this past year, and we want to, again, thank you for your work with us, and I'll pass it on to Jim to look at the coming year.
Just another item, John, you brought up the BMX tournament that starts this week. And Derek, I don't think you were on the board then, but the coalition lobbied for some money to improve that track. Dan Sped and Visit Hagerstown and the BMX club realized that they didn't have the infrastructure to compete for national tours, and they wanted to do that, national competitions. I think we got, I believe it was like $100,000, I think, that year to do some improvements. The club got that done. The city helped with that. And then as a result, Visit Hagerstown applied for the ability to host that tournament. And as this Saturday, we'll have 800 athletes and their family coming to the community to race. So another good example of how that investment in infrastructure helped with tourism. Just so you know, and the paper I hand out is the same thing was in your packet, with the exception of we had an update on the county's public training building, had to do with the propane prop improvements. But this is a list of the items that are up for consideration for the final agenda. These were a result of our brainstorming effort when we have the first couple meetings and we throw out any item we want to be considered. One thing we did get direction on from not only our lobbyists but our delegation was, of course, the state is facing some budget shortfalls this year. Capital money is going to be limited. They recommended, unlike past years, that we limit our capital requests, try to pick what our priorities are, try to stick to just those priorities, because you're not going to get multiple projects done. It's going to be difficult to do that this year. So we wanted to try to start out with a little bit scaled down version. This is the draft list, but the final list would be put together. We hope to get that finalized at our meeting tomorrow, so I encourage someone from the county to attend that. The first item, of course, everybody is well aware of, is I-81. As always, we've got the Phase 2. We're looking for Phase 3, mainly design money. It's going to take 5 or 6 years to do the environmental work and the design work. We want to make sure that gets completed at the time, that's completed by the time Phase 2 is finished, which is in the 28, 29 timeframe. We want to then, be able to work with construction funding. I-70, 65 interchange, that's another project. I know they've been doing work over there, but the interchange work, we haven't had the funding for that. We're waiting to see what the Route 11 Bridge at a Pell study, the money we got last year, was supposed to come out this fall. The results of that study, it may not be till spring now from what I'm hearing, but we're waiting to see if there'll be a request for that. Hagerstown's number one priority is the field house, as it was last year. They also have some legislation for tax sales of vacant abandoned properties. Last year, they had a couple bills passed that help with this area, but one of the bills did not make it, and they want to reintroduce that bill this year. I just point out that that is for properties that have been vacant for a long time, that have been sitting there, and trying to speed up the time it takes to get them on the tax sale so that city could purchase them and then try to get them back on the tax rolls. Springfield Manor is a new item. Williamsport added they want to acquire the property there around the barn and do some acquisition and rehabilitation, and then possibly some educational, use that building for some educational purposes. The Dolman Black Heritage Museum, another item that we had last year, was added to the list. The long-term water and wastewater infrastructure needs study, that was also on there last year. We did not get funding on that, but we're all aware. I know we had the joint city-county meeting that talked about our long-term infrastructure challenges with water and wastewater. And just reading through your comp plan draft, I know that's highlighted as something that we're going to have to address based on projected growth over the next 10 or 15 years. We want to try to keep ahead of that. We felt the study was an important item to try to get done, so we at least have a framework to build from. The public safety training building, we're happy to see the funding last year, able to build a defensive driving track. That starts this fall. This would be for the next phase, which would handle propane firefighting training props, as well as a high bay training building that would allow for more specialized training of our emergency service personnel. That could be used time and time again, and there's, according to Dave Hayes, there's nothing like that in the county. So
When you say the propane building, that's the fire, burn tower.
this is a little different. This is different. It's has to do with, maybe Michelle has a little more detail on that.
Yeah, it has to do with propane flammable liquid training props that are inside of the building, not necessarily the tower or the burn building itself. It's the props inside the building so that they can put out fires inside a contained area.
Then the visitor center, last year that did not get funded, but the CVB's number one priority was a new visitor center downtown. They want to try to make that happen again. There was some discussion on whether or not we'd be looking for some funding for the Williamsport Library, but we felt that was still working through some issues over there, so that will probably be delayed till next year. That's why that's kind of highlighted in red. On the watch list, which are the items that our lobbyist tries to keep track of for us, Tourism Promotions Act, there's the state DMOs are all proposing an increase to that annual allocation. Washington County benefits from that allocation. We have done very well in some of the competitive grants that they release every year. We want, Dr. Klobber wants to keep an eye on the higher education funding to make sure his community college funding maintains the way it is. The state libraries are also looking for capital funding change next year, and we'll be following that issue. That's handled by all the state libraries, but that, of course, would be beneficial to a project in Williamsport if that happens here in the coming years. As always, we have gaming protection revenue and the shifting of liabilities to state, from the state to local governments. That certainly is a concern when you have budget deficits as they are projecting this year. USMH operational funding. Also, the Commission on Transportation Revenue and Infrastructure is working right now. I'm lucky to sit on that commission, but there's a lot of efforts there on trying to handle what we're going to do to fund our roads with the gas tax continuing to decline. As more cars get higher gas mileage, people travel less to work with more people working at home. So we're trying to look at the long-term solution there for our roads and bridges. Highway user revenue, as always, the county's still at about 10% of what they were originally. Want to try to get that back up. We mentioned the Route 11 bridge. Also, Maryland Blueprint for Education. That is the biggest pull, I think, expenses from the state that's leading to some of the deficits. So we're going to follow how that is being handled in the next session. And then there was some changes in our possible legislation on annexation and tax differential laws between counties and municipalities. We were asked to keep an eye on that and just keep everybody updated on what happens there. So that is the draft list of items under consideration. Again, tomorrow, we really hope to try to narrow that down to just a final list. I'd encourage each group to kind of pick your top priority, and if you want multiple, that certainly is up to the partners. This is a partner-owned organization. Paul and I just try to keep the trains on time and everything, written up on the paper. One thing also to consider, I forgot to mention, is Senator McKay had talked to us about, there was some concern at the state level on some of the projects, not from Washington County necessarily, but this is statewide, projects that were coming back and looking for extensions for the money that they received in the past years because the project wasn't ready to be constructed as originally proposed. Apparently, the state's going to look a little harder at that, so any type of capital request, we need to be sure that that project is basically shovel-ready and ready to move forward. You have a certain time limit that's attached to a lot of the different pots of state money to try to get things going. So if you pick these items, if it's not quite ready yet, like we mentioned with the library, that's probably something to delay until it is. But for items that we could get the money and get that money out and moving, and those are the projects to consider.
Jim, I got just a quick question.
Sure.
Under watch list, shifting of liabilities from state to localities, what's that mean?
Well, typically, you're probably going to face that here this coming couple of years, that we faced that back in my day a little bit, where the state starts looking at things they normally fund, and then as a way to try to balance their budget, they shift that responsibility over to the local governments.
So more
like highway user funds is an example.
More mandated funding for us.
Mandates, things like that. Our lobbyist is asked to keep track of that, and if he's hearing a bill is being proposed that might push that, I'm sure you'll hear that from the Ermeco legislative group. They'll be tracking that as well, but it's nice to have another set of eyes looking for those type of things.
Thank you.
I have two things.
Sure.
Would you just repeat the I-81? We received $100 million for phase two, but it's in design now, correct?
It's, they're finishing up the design and engineering. I think something's important to note there, though, is that money came about 5 years ago where we got, I think it was about $5 million to do that work. If we weren't near completion on that design work, we wouldn't have had the ability to request that federal money that came available last year. So
What I'm getting at is all of our impatience for it to be completely done. So we need that extra money for phase three now to begin that design, so it's not 20 years from now before 81 is completely finished.
And not to give angst where it should be, but just to be aware, and I think, I congratulate Scott Hobbs and all the commissioners and our delegation for pushing really hard with I-81 at the CTP tour. But one thing that was done this year by MDOT is that they proposed a draft CTP plan that was not balanced. That plan typically comes out where they take the projections of gas tax revenue and what the trust fund's going to have, and they put projects that equal that. Well, the new policy of the new MDOT was to pass a draft that is unbalanced. It's got about a $2 million deficit in it. I think it's only a $50, $60, $80 million in year one, but years 5 and 6 is where a lot of those shortfalls are. They felt from us, and you might have heard the secretary mention this, kind of glance over it a little bit, but they mentioned that they will be looking at that. They did it that way for more transparency. MDOT did not want to be the entity, the sole entity that looked at a budget that wasn't balanced, said, we're going to handpick which projects we cut out. They wanted to kind of hand that to the General Assembly and to the Governor's administration and kind of say, here's what we think our plan should be, but we don't quite have enough money to make that work. So either you got to figure out a way to bump up our revenue, or we got to cut projects together out of that plan to make it balanced. So that does give me some concern on phase two, just to be safe. We're better safe than sorry. I'll give you an example of how our coalition works. You know, when that was first discussed, really before it even came out publicly, our lobbyist contacted us and to say, hey, we have this issue. We immediately reached out to our delegation to let them know of that, and they're keeping track. Right now, I think, you know, I think the state is pretty aware of the importance of I-81, and you know, they even highlighted phase two as one of their public safety items that they were going to be doing in the coming year. So I would be really surprised if they would backtrack, if that project would get backtracked, but just, you know, just to give you some warning.
Senator Corderman pointed out that the box wasn't checked for any future funding in their proposed out years.
Yeah, that we mentioned that on the safety box, and, you know, even that part wasn't checked, but they corrected that.
That brings me to my next question or comment. If, for the Williamsport new bridge design relocation, but the current bridge, you have it on the watch list for deterioration. Well, if it takes this long to get the money, get the study, and get the bridge completed, that Route 11 bridge that currently exists is deteriorating. That's a good word for it. So we want to make sure we have an eye for funding on that in the meanwhile to fill that gap between the time a new bridge is constructed. That's going to be an important.
Yes, and we all know how heavy that gets used when I-81
Especially
gets
when
shut down.
81 and 70 shut down, it's bumper to bumper with tractor and trailer.
I think a lot will come out of that Pell study to see get a sense of what the cost would be for that. That's a huge expense, and I think the community's gonna have to figure out, you know, where all that stands as a priority. I know there was look to redeck that bridge, the Williamsport Bridge, in last year's plan, and the Williamsport officials, you know, trying to look ahead, said, look, before we try to redeck it, you know, is this something that we have a chance of moving? Because relocating it, you know, I hate to spend the money to redeck it and then.
Yeah, I
if we're trying to move
understand
it,
that thought, but it may
we'll
be
see.
before time for the bridge is built.
Yeah, it's, you know, as again, sitting on that commission, you know, I was just reading an article the other day, the average person loses $500 a year because of the poor condition of the roads, just, you know, between potholes, damage to their vehicles, you know, congestion, things like that.
Could you repeat that figure again? I'm sorry.
I think it was $500 a year due to the bad roads is what the cost is to the.
Cost to who?
Per vehicle, to the person who drives, the driver. So there's a cost not to maintain our roads, was the point, and there's a cost, of course, to do it. I don't know what the rule of thumb is, but if you figure 12,000 miles a year, 22 miles a gallon in the car, that works out to about 650 gallons of gas and about $250, $80 a gas tax is what people spend a year on that. So, but you're going to lose more if we don't, you know, if we don't keep the roads up to par.
Okay.
So trying to find that right balance is one of the challenges for that commission. Trying to figure out, you know, what is that right number? Everybody's tight, you know, I mean, everybody's, you know, there's not a lot of extra money floating around in most families' households, so, you know, they're going to be concerned. I will also say, too, as a rural county, and I think Senator McKay mentioned it, but I have heard the Secretary of Planning on our commission mention the need to consider rural equity as we come up with some kind of plans for how to fund the Transportation Trust Fund, and she did acknowledge that people in rural areas tend to have to drive more. In general, you don't want to unfairly burden them with a vehicle mile tax type of thing to try to fund roads when rural families don't have all the conveniences located. They don't have the same public transit system as they do in Central Maryland. So there is some, you know, there is concern of that, trying to be fair from rural counties to urban counties.
That's good to hear. Paul, Jim, I have a question. I think all of these projects, you know, have merits in their own right. They're all important to that entity that's requesting it. But the elephant in the room, time again, we've already mentioned I-81. Do you think, and I support the request for the Community Lobbying Coalition, but do you think the I-81 project, do you think we're at a point where that might be worthy of a I don't know, focus group, study group of its own, just a group out there that's all they promote? It's not intermingled with other requests. So when we meet with leaders in Annapolis, we're presenting just that particular project rather than this is our booklet with all the projects that we're advocating for funding. I think we need to, like you said, it takes years to get that money. And, you know, I'm looking in the pamphlet from last year, you talk about provide capacity for plan development, desperately need it to improve safety and provide capacity for plan development. I think many would argue we don't have that capacity right now. And what could we do in the interim? So maybe this group not only looks at securing that funding in the future for I-81, but safety measures for the interim. Do we need to reduce the speed limit? I'm not a traffic engineer expert to know that, but that's something I've heard. Do we need to reduce the speed limit on I-81? Do we need to limit what kind of construction activity takes place along I-81? If we don't have, and if we're acknowledging we don't have that capacity for this development, don't want to take drastic draconian measures, but something that might catch Annapolis's attention when we say, hey, this is something severe enough, we need to slow down that traffic on I-81. We need to slow down what takes place along I-81 because of how dangerous it is. Do you think it would be worthwhile to have a separate group that focuses just on that particular project?
Well, I think that's something you'd have to think through, because I think there's pros and cons to that. I know, Wayne, and I mentioned this at the CTP, I said one of the challenges I have is you got all this frustration about taking so many years just to get the money to do half the project. But, you know, one of the good things we've done because of our years of advocacy, not just at the coalition level, but, you know, all the commissioners, all the delegation have been united, is it's hard to walk into a room down there where they don't know 81 now. And that hasn't always been the case, because I had a friend in the MDOT's office who called me, you know, back in like 2015. He's like, you know, when we get in the rooms to talk about what really needs to be done, I-81's not getting mentioned. I just want to let you know, maybe you need to turn the heat up a little more out there. We did that, and you know, to this day, every time we walk into a room, they're like, I got it, I-81 is your #1 priority. So, you know, a special group I don't think is going to necessarily change that or improve it, because we've really done, you know, we've kind of gotten an A effort, I think, in really getting that information out there. As far as the planning and how to handle other things, you know, the pros are you try to do something and maybe it affects in the interim. And I know our MPO and Matt Mullinex, they have some suggestions, TSMO items that they're trying to do to help with some of the safety issues there. But the other side of that is you don't want to give the state a reason to delay it either by saying, we'll try to keep the congestion down, and then.
I understand that. I just don't want to keep it dangerous just to get attention.
That's kind of an old politician's way of saying, I'm not sure, Wayne. I think there's pros and cons to doing it, and you have to kind of think through it. I don't think it's an easy yes. I don't know if I jump on that board without really thinking through all the sideways. I think, you know, another item was said to me back when we weren't getting a lot of attention is 404 did have a grassroots lobbying effort that was done by a lot of the citizens down there. They had their own like website, and they were promoting a lot of the different things, which the state took notice of, you know, maybe having a little more of that grassroots kind of effort out there that's promoting it. I know our elected public officials have done an outstanding job at you know, bringing that to the top of the attention, but sometimes that grassroots effort may help a little bit. That's something where, you know, if we had a good concerned group of citizens wanted to put a website together of things and try to track what the data is and keep it out there. But I feel like the state is trying to get this project done. It's just a matter of revenue and priority. And, you know, one of the things we are going to really face is there's a lot of push to do a lot of transit projects. And I'm hearing that around that commission table. And transit's important. We all benefit from transit, even if we don't use it, because it keeps cars off the road. But, you know, one transit project, a big transit project down the city, can be multiple I-81s, you know, from start to finish as far as the amount that would cost. So we're going to have to compete as rural counties with the importance of highways to make sure that we get the right balance between investment in transit and investment in. Maybe we could talk about that more offline and see what could happen there, but be something to think about.
Hey, Jim, a couple of things, real quick. You're not old, and you're still a politician. Okay? So it's worrisome when you say it's about revenue and priority, because if it's those two things, we're going to be at the end of the stick. And, you know, I'm not very hopeful then. You mentioned community groups. Where are the Amazons and the warehouse companies and the occupants of the warehouse companies and the trucking firms at, since they're the ones primarily causing a great deal of this congestion and concern? Where are they at the table in Annapolis? They have governance outreach teams They have lobbying dollars. They spend millions upon millions of it. Okay, I've seen the sausage making in Washington DC. I know how they throw money around to lobby. So they need to be at the table because they're going to be impacted if they can't use this I-81. And I just ask you to look at that.
We we have chatted with them when we've filed for infra grant applications. We've worked with a lot of the big companies. I know a couple of them have put on a phone call with their lobbying agents, and they've tried to work some of the federal issues when we did for infra grants. But I think it's a good point you make, Derek, to try to maybe bring them in on the state level as well.
I think it could be very helpful because.
You tried to use that for the federal level, but we could look at that for the state.
And then on the sheet, there's 11 projects. And given what you already said and what I've heard already in other venues about the pressure on the budget and the competition for resources, I worry that, if we have 11, and I try to think in terms, and I ask everyone to think in terms of what creates the broadest impact and for county, city, et cetera. And I-81 definitely is there. 70-65 exchange is definitely there. Long-term water is definitely there. Public Safety Training Center, everyone benefits from that. And then the Visitor Center, Visitors Bureau, because that brings tourism in. The others, I'm afraid when I look at them, even though, as Wayne says, they all have merit, at the end of the day, if you don't want to hurt your big, highest priority items by asking for too much, because it confuses the message from us. So I just asked to look at that, what provides the best outcome for us and where the real priority is. And that's hard to do because you have to tell people no.
Again, it's a partner organization. The partners have that say in there. And what we've tried to ask the partners at the start of the year is pick your one project that's your number one, because then when we talk to the leadership in Annapolis, they say, what's your priority? We could try to balance the need to handle 8 or 9 different partners' priorities, but at the same time, not have multiple.
So my question is, and inform me, do we have a separate lobbyist for the county in addition to this effort?
Yeah.
Yes.
A separate,
Bruce Barriano is.
Bruce, that's
Yeah,
Bruce, that's
yeah.
who I thought. And the city does too, right? They have their own
Yeah.
separate lobbying entity. So last thing on the costs, and I'm very concerned about rural drivers, as Senator McKay was. But sometimes when you're looking at this type of a situation and the sausage making about the revenue and EVs, and when you charge the vehicle, you're paying an electrical tax too, and there's lots of fees there. So it's not, devoid from that, how you tap into that. But sometimes you have to just go back to square one and just reinvent the wheel and not have a gas tax. Just like public schools. Public schools are general revenues.
I think that's,
For the
I
common
think
good.
everything's on the table with that commission. I can't speak for all the members. We haven't gotten into that detail yet, but I just from talking to you, Derek, I think that's kind of what they feel like. There's no easy answer, and maybe you just need to start from square one.
Yeah.
Just come up with a way.
Just thought.
Yep, no, it's,
So I also want to mention again our annual reception, Day in Annapolis on the 31st. Again, we have lunch, we have large group meetings, and then we have the reception from 4:30 to 6:30 where we showcase Washington County. We get a number of General Assembly members who come out. They don't come to Hagerstown or Washington County, but it gives them a chance to see us up close and personal. Again, that's at the Governor Calvert House. So we would ask that you consider supporting us again at the $10,000 level, which you have been doing. And again, we have a great name recognition in Annapolis, and this is part of it, especially when we come down as partners. That would be our request.
Thank you, guys.
I would motion that we fund the $10,000.
Second.
Motion,
I just want to point out that last year this was funded out of the Board of County Commissioners Contingency Fund, and that would be the recommended funding for this year as well.
I add that to my motion.
okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you
We'll
very
see you
much.
tomorrow at tomorrow's meeting. Somebody.
Okay, character counts, funding request, and October 2023 proclamation. Carolyn Brooks, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Carolyn Brooks, Director and Founder of Character Counts Washington County Incorporated. And with me, I have
Colleen Huber, I'm the coordinator of school council for Washington County.
First of all, I'm going to thank you for your time and certainly for your support in the past many, many years. October is Character Counts Month, and particularly next week, the week between the 15th and the 21st is Character Counts Week. A little bit of history. The Character Counts Coalition was formed in 1998, and actually this year we're celebrating our 25th anniversary of being established here in Washington County. Character Counts is about 6 pillars of character, and I'm hoping by now that each of you know what those pillars are. They are trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. And those are six simple words, but I often say, well, you know, it's more important now than ever, and right today it is more important than ever. We see the things that are happening in our country and in the world, and the 6 simple words of character counts just mean so much. We are definitely advocates of the golden rule, and a lot of times we have to take the time to explain what that is to people because we've gotten so far away from it, we've forgotten what the golden rule is. Our coalition meets monthly, and we include students participating with our meetings, and certainly we've had a strong partnership with the public school system for over the years, and the Hagerstown Housing Authority and the community college, and we've got a lot of partners that do support us and participate in a lot of our events. We continue to focus on random acts of kindness. We encourage people to think about something simple, you know, the simple smile or whatever. And actually, we have a list of 40 in case there are people in the community that can't think of anything randomly to do kind. And, you know, we don't put this list out just to be, you know, facetious about it, but sometimes you have to give folks an idea of simple things that you can do that can make a difference in someone's life. So we continue to support and advocate random acts of kindness and being kind to simple, small words again, but we have to repeat that over and over and over, the importance of being kind and things that you can do that are acts of kindness. We have a monthly newsletter that offers tips for parents and educators, and I'm hoping, I think that you all are on that mailing list, and if you're not getting those newsletters, please let me know. We offer a scholarship annually to a student to continue education at college or a technical school. And the highlight of what we do each year is a celebration of elementary youth. And some of you have attended those, and we certainly enjoy supporting one student in each of the elementary schools. And it's a red carpet event, and the last 2 years we've had it at Hagerstown Community College, and we plan to have it there again this year, and hopefully that you will be able to attend. But that's an opportunity for us to celebrate one student from each of the schools, and their parents are invited and representatives from the schools. And these are students that they're doing good things, they're honoring the pillars of character counts, and you don't ordinarily hear about them. We hear about students that have gotten themselves into trouble, but we don't hear and praise the students that are doing good things often enough. And so we really delight in having that event. And that is the event that you have sponsored for us in past years. And even the years that we had to shut down for COVID, we were able to pull it off with your help. So we are making that request again. So we thank you for your past support, and we are requesting continued support. And right now, Colleen, do you have any comments? No further comments, okay. So
Carolyn, I've been able to attend quite a bit, several of them, the elementary event you were speaking of.
appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, you do a wonderful job. I mean, I really appreciate what you do for the community. The kids and the parents are there. And a lot of us have been there. It's just it's sort of, I don't know how to put it, but it's an event that they really appreciate.
Yeah.
They do. And so I wanted to thank you for that.
Parents come out with the cameras.
Yeah, they do.
But your request is for $3,000, right? And where's that coming from?
The County Commissioners Contingency Fund as well.
Motion to support out of that fund.
Motion is second. All in favor by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any volunteers to do the proclamation, or? Okay.
Let you go.
Carolyn? Go over here to the flags. On behalf of the county and the county commissioners, we'd like to present this proclamation for Character Counts Month, October of 2023. And I'll save all the whereases. Young people will be the stewards of our communities, nation, and world in critical times. And the present and future well-being of our society requires an involved, caring citizenry with good character. And concerns about the character training of children has taken on a new sense of urgency as violence by and against youth threatens the physical and psychological well-being of the nation. More than ever, children need strong, constructive guidance from their families and their communities, including schools, youth organizations, religious institutions, and civic groups. The character of a nation is only as strong as the character of its individual citizens, and the community benefits when young people learn that good character counts in personal relationships, in schools, and in the workplace. Character development is first and foremost an obligation of families. Through efforts by faith communities, schools, and youth, civic and human service organizations also play an important role in supporting family efforts by fostering and promoting good character. Every adult, I'll say that again, every adult has the responsibility to promote the development of good character. Therefore, we, the Board of County Commissioners of Washington County, Maryland, do hereby recognize October 2023 as Character Counts Month and encourage our citizens, schools, businesses, and government to support Washington County's Character Counts program.
All the commissioners?
Yes, we'll come up front. I know the feeling. Thank you. Bounce the act.
Okay, can we all just do a little shifting, shift? Okay, that's perfect. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, next item is optional third early voting center for Washington County elections. Barry Jackson, good morning.
Morning, Commissioners. Barry Jackson, Director of the Washington County Board of Elections. Also with me in the gallery today are our Board President, Tammy Downen, and our Deputy Director, Teresa Morningstar. Wanted to give you just a quick recap of the timeline, just to demonstrate how we got where we are today and why I'm sitting here this morning. On Tuesday, September 12th, the Washington County Board of Elections welcomed public comments about some of the options that we were considering for early voting sites. And then on Monday, September 18th, SBE notified the county that we have 99,396 active registered voters. That's important because election law says that if you have between 50,000 and 100,000 active registered voters, you're required to have no fewer than 2 early voting sites. And so we knew at that point that we would have to have 2 early voting sites. And so we had a special meeting on September 19th where the Washington County Board of Elections selected the Washington County Election Center on Virginia Avenue as early voting site number 1 and the Hancock Town Hall as early voting site number 2. And also at that meeting, the Board of Elections selected an optional 3rd early voting site, and that would be the Boonesboro American Legion. And that, of course, would require approval by the county commissioners as well as our State Board of Elections. And so that's why we're here today, to request that approval from the county commissioners so that we can then submit that to the State Board of Elections. Currently up on the screen, you'll see a map that shows the 3 sites that we've selected, and it shows the 10-mile radiuses of each of those. And so as you can see, those 3 sites, we believe, best meet the requirements of the county. Almost the entire county is covered. We do have an area in the western part of Clear Spring and Big Pool, as well as Cascade, and then Sandy Hook and Knoxville that aren't covered. But this is the best we've done so far as far as covering the entire county.
That's the highest percentage of people, like maybe a percentage of those 3 sites just cover.
Correct.
Your forecast is more people can get those 3 sites than any other 3 sites you could pick.
That's
So the
correct.
3 sites are,
The Election Center on Virginia Avenue is number 1, Hancock Town Hall is number 2, and then Boonesboro American Legion will be our optional 3rd site.
Barry, if I may, I want to commend the Board of Elections. They did a lot of good work. They looked through, my count, probably 20 GIS images like this, looking at different combinations. Really good work, and I think you had a large number of people show up for the public comment, the most I've seen in any public comment period in my time in the county. I think it's a very reasonable approach. It covers 94%. I strongly support adding the 3rd site, and I think I mentioned I would advocate for that. And I would move that we support that.
We would have, so we're required to have 2. 3rd, we're not quite there yet because that's after 100,000 registered voters, right?
That's correct.
And so the 3rd one, I support it. I just wanted curious how much extra does that cost to add that 3rd one?
It's already budgeted for.
It is currently in the FY24 budget. It's about $50,000.
Okay, it's already budgeted too, yeah, okay.
okay, we have manpower to do a 3rd one?
Correct.
I support these locations. Thank you for your diligence on doing this. The Board of Elections, I previously served on the Board of Elections, and I know drawing the maps can be difficult and tedious, and the fact that we have that much of our county covered, that adds geographic diversity, which is important. So thank you for that.
And I just want to commend the county GIS department for putting those maps together. They did that for us. Excellent job. And yes, you're correct. We had 5 different sites that we were considering, and so we did every single combination, including not using the election center, which really wasn't ever an option. But we did that just to say, here are all the different combinations.
So one thing I would observe is the state rule, I think, is that when you go to 3, when it's mandated at 3, you try to look at 5-mile radius.
That is correct.
But we're below that threshold, and we looked at that using the under 100,000 10-mile radius.
Yes.
And I think you're taking advantage of that opportunity is the best thing for our citizens, so thank you.
Yeah, you did a good job, Barry, and the board. I mean, that's really a win-win for everybody in the county. But did you make a motion? Did I hear you make a motion?
I did make a motion to approve the 3rd site.
We had discussion, but I'll second it, so.
Second.
And before we vote, I'd just like to comment and thank the Board of Elections and your board. I know they put a lot of hard work into this. I was at that public hearing with Commissioner Harvey, and there was some misunderstandings about the home site, if you will, at Virginia Avenue, and I had follow-up conversation the next day with some of your board members and to clarify all that. So I think this is a very good approach. It covers 94% of our citizenry, and hats off to you. So
Congratulations on being director.
right. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. 5-0. Thank you very much. Thank you for your hard work.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Next item is intergovernmental cooperative purchase, 23-0133, 2 Chevrolet Tahoe for the Sheriff's Department. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. Rick Curry, Director of Purchasing.
Washington County Sheriff's Office.
Subject for you is Intergovernmental Cooperative Purchase, INTG 23-0133, for 2 Chevy Tahoes for the Sheriff's Office. Recommended motion by resolution for the Sheriff's Office to purchase 2 2023 Chevy Tahoes, amount of $43,936 for a total of $87,872 from Hertridge Fleet Service Incorporated of Milford, Delaware, to utilize another jurisdiction's contract was awarded by the State of Maryland, contract number 01B2600312. The vehicles are being replaced because they're beyond repair. It was in a crash. Also, they exceed the county's guideline for replacement. The Code of Public Law does allow for this board to purchase goods and services on a contract, even though we weren't part of that, as long as we followed the terms and conditions of that contract. And there is a savings for doing so, because we don't have to evaluate a bid and do the solicitation. You can see the funding impact for the vehicles. Excuse me. We have concurrence from the sheriffs, and you have the attachment of the quote in the resolutions. Any questions?
Now, are they, how long?
Actually, when we called down, there was 2 coming in, that's why we jumped on it so quick.
Oh, good. I'm gonna take you with me when I buy a new truck. Yeah, I'm okay. Motion to approve.
Second, just a question. The 2 vehicles that are being replaced that were in a crash aren't repairable. Did we receive any kind of insurance reimbursement for those, or?
We received that, and that went into the new car fund to help pay for,
Do you know about how much that was, or maybe we can get that later?
one of them was, I want to say 18,000, and I can't tell you what the other one was.
We can get confirmation for you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Motion?
We have to, we have second, so.
Did we have it? Okay, all in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Next item is intergovernmental cooperative purchase, 23-0134, fire apparatus tools and accessories for Division of Emergency Services.
Again, Rick Curry, Director of Purchasing.
Eric Jacobs, Operations Manager, Emergency Service.
Subjects intergovernmental cooperative purchase, INTG 23-0134, fire apparatus tools and accessories for Division of Emergency Services. Recommended motion by resolution for the approval of the purchase of fire apparatus tools and accessories for Division of Emergency Services from Municipal Emergency Services of Rockville, Maryland, and to utilize another jurisdiction's contract was awarded by Sourcewell to Municipal Emergency Services of Rockville. Contract number 040220. The division is asking to purchase 2 cutters in the amount of $22,655.70, 2 spreaders for the amount of $24,167.16, 2 rams for the purchase price of $15,879.24, and ram extensions, 2 ram extensions in the total price for $15,270.70, and also 7 batteries totaling $5,664.33, and 3 chargers totaling $1,652.43 for a total sum of $85,546.56. The Code of Public Law does allow for this procurement. Even though we weren't part of the contract, you can see the fiscal impact funding available. We have concurrence, and we have the attachments of the quotes and the resolution. Any questions?
I just got a curious question, Eric. Where are these, I mean, if I wanted to come look for these things and whenever you get them, where are they going to be?
So the existing equipment on Rescue Squad 2001, which is assigned to Sharpsburg, that existing equipment will come off and be replaced with the battery tools. And then the existing equipment will move to the training center to supplement equipment for the training center and additional classes that'll be held there. The reserve squad that is currently on Frederick Street, some of that equipment will also move to that.
Okay, thank you. So what happens to the equipment you replace? It gets sold somewhere or?
No, the equipment, it'll just move to the training center to
Okay, gotcha.
supplement the rescue classes that are held there.
Thank you. I'd motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Any further discussion or questions? Call for the vote. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is Maryland Department of Transportation, 3-year salt utilization agreement. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning, Commissioners. Andrew Eshelman, Director of Public Works. Here before you seeking a motion to execute the 3-year salt utilization agreement with the Maryland Department of Transportation. As you recall, we were in here recently, Zane was, for the county's salt contract. That's our primary contract. This would be used in the event that our county stockpiles are depleted. It's a secondary option.
Motion?
Motion.
My fellows fall asleep on me or what?
What, you made a motion?
Motion to approve.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Motion and second on the floor to approve as submitted. All in favor by saying aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is Airport seeks competitive FAA grant under the bipartisan infrastructure law project to provide 4,800 square feet of east side expansion space in the landside portions of the terminal.
Good morning. Neil Doran, Airport Director.
Andrew Eshelman, Director of Public Works.
We've come this morning to seek a motion. This is an existing project within our capital improvement plan that would add additional space in the terminal, as mentioned, on the eastern wing in the area of our ticket counters. We did apply for this 2 years ago. The one change is we're anticipating higher costs, but this is a special opportunity here to take advantage of funding between the FAA and the MAA. Will cover 97.5% of the cost for this project. This project's important in that it will allow us to modernize older parts of our terminal, give us additional capacity and additional room. If any new airlines wish to serve Hagerstown, we'd have the space for them. So we're seeking a motion to empower me as Airport Director to apply through the FAA and MAA to sign any grant applications, and if awarded, to accept those grants in the future. It would involve a use of $180,556 in our capital improvement reserve funds to meet that 2.5% local match share.
Yeah, motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second to approve as submitted. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, and I think it's a no-brainer.
Thank you very much.
When you can get 97.5% funding if it works out.
If it works out, competitive grants. So there's several years to apply. It's an overall 5-year window, so we'll keep attempting and hopefully we're successful.
Hope so. Derek, were you going to say something? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for keeping an eye on me.
Well, Next item is the Clement Royal Legacy Program, RLP easement. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Chris Boggs, Rural Preservation Administrator. I figured I would like to start this presentation out with just a little kind of a milestone update on a couple of our programs. So just toward the end of FY '23, we managed to eclipse the 15,000 acre point for our Maryland Ag Land Preservation Foundation, or MOUth easement program. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then also, Rural Legacy, we are approaching the 10,000 acre, or that we're approaching the 9,000 acre mark, which I expect to exceed those 9,000 acres sometime this fiscal year. And additionally, which is even, I think maybe a bigger deal, is this fiscal year, I expect to surpass 40,000 acres of permanently preserved land in Washington County. Now, I know we have, much more than that in protected land, but this is just concerning conservation easements themselves. So the programs that we administer here at the county level, I expect to surpass that 40,000 acre point sometime this fiscal year. So I thought that might be worth mentioning here before I get started. The Clement Rural Legacy Easement Project is a rural legacy program, so it will contribute to that 9,000 we're heading towards. And it's 39.64 acres there on Spielman Road in Fairplay. And it'll serve to permanently preserve a nice ag, scenic, environmental, and historic property in the county. The parcel has both ag land and woodlands, and it lies in the part of the county that was heavily trafficked during Civil War, especially the approach to the Battle of Antietam. And is also the location of the Hogmeyer Berryman Farm, which is listed on the National Register for Historic Places. So it's a nice historic property. It also is contiguous to several sites on the Maryland and National Historic Register. Further, St. James Run traverses the eastern portion of the property, and they have buffered that with a CREP buffer in order to maintain the quality of the stream. This parcel is going to add to a block of thousands of acres of contiguously preserved farmland around the battlefield. And we'll also be extinguishing 10 development rights with the purchase of this easement. This easement is going to be a little different than our normal rural legacy easements. We're approaching it this way to preserve it with all county funding. Every year, DNR has what they call their county report card. And so for every county that uses rural legacy funds, they do a little, you have to submit an annual report, and then they have their little grading system about it. And one of the areas of Washington County's weakness has been the amount of funding that of our own county dollars that we put toward preserving rural legacy, or leveraging rural legacy funding. So with this project, our request will involve paying for the project in its entirety with county ag transfer tax dollars. So we won't be using any state funding for this project, but we're hoping that the result will be, we'll say that DNR, they'll look at it and say, well, look, the county preserved this 40-acre farm using their own funding for our program. Hopefully, it improves our grade and results in a larger grant in following years.
Chris, that ag transfer comes from, whether it's a big building, a house, a farm, once you take it out of ag, I'm going to have to pay an ag transfer tax.
That's correct. So, yeah, if a property is assessed with the State Departments of Assessment and Taxation, if it's assessed ag and it converts to a different assessment, whether it be residential, commercial, industrial, then
we get a percentage of that.
We get a percentage of that. Usually it's around 7%. A portion goes to our share of the state ag transfer tax, and a portion of that goes to our local county.
How much money right now is available for ag preservation with the county?
You mean just with the transfer tax?
Well, how much, if I'd ask you, okay, today, how much money do you have to preserve land?
Well, right now, I have, for rural legacy alone, I have a little over, soon I'll have a little over $4 million.
Okay, and then?
our grant that was just over 3 million that was announced a month or two ago, we just haven't received the grant agreement back from the state. So we're just, once I get the
But
grant
that's for
agreement back.
that's rural legacy, which is
Yes.
a slightly different.
Correct. So that's a portion of it. MALF itself, that comes from Maryland Agricultural Land Preservation Foundation, which of course the funding comes from MDA. That we don't really have an idea of what amount of funding they're going to provide
What you would
each
guess,
county.
maybe 2.5 million or something?
My guess for MALF this coming cycle is probably going to be around 2 to 3 million.
Right.
Depending on what we have.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at, how much, so let's just hypothetically say this next year you're going to have $6 or $7 million for preservation. Would that be fair?
Yeah, and if you add in some of our other programs, that's probably
And how much?
close, but again, it's spitballing really.
I get that. I'm just trying to hypothetically. So if you have, say, X amount of dollars, how much more need is there to preserve land above those X amount of dollars?
I mean, the amount of interest we have in land preservation in the county, I mean, you're talking, you'd probably need, 30,
If you had
40
20
million
million,
to
you could
preserve
spend
them
it
all.
for preservation.
Yeah, right, yeah,
That's all I was getting at.
That's, and we looked at that at our Ag Board meeting with Commissioner Harvey, and, it was, again, you never know what trends are going to occur with land values and appraisals of ag land, and it's just, it's really tough, but we thought maybe around 30 million would probably, expunge our list of interested applicants.
And Chris, the thing is, that's your list, and then a lot of people don't apply because they see that there is a list.
Correct.
And, you run into those issues, and as Frederick County has learned, that if you don't preserve it earlier, the cost explodes on you, and it becomes extremely difficult to do anything.
Yep.
Yeah, my point was there's more need than there is money, a lot more need than there is money.
There always has been, but yep, it's the case nowadays.
Yeah, I'd motion to approve this one, so.
Yep, I second.
Okay, motion is second on the floor to approve as submitted. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Good job, Chris. Keep it up.
Okay, next item is memorandum of agreement, Time to Care Act, Insurance Collaborative.
On Tuesday, September the 26th, during staff comments, the board provided a consensus to join the MACO, MABE, and MML Time to Care Act Collaborative. This collaborative requires all Maryland employers, the Maryland Time to Care Act requires all Maryland employers to provide up to 12 weeks of paid benefits to a covered individual who is taking leave from employment due to caring for certain family members, the individual's own serious health condition, or a qualifying exigency arising out of a family member's military deployment. An employer may satisfy the Time to Care Act's requirement through an equivalent private employer plan or an EPIP. An employer that provides covered employees with an EPIP and those covered employees are exempt from the Time to Care Act's required contributions that are required to begin on October the 1st of 2024. Benefits for employees are required to begin on January the 1st of 2026. By opting into this collaborative, the cost for employees and the county will be deferred from fiscal year 25 until fiscal year 26. We do have a preliminary estimated cost for fiscal year 26 of approximately $288,000 to $300,000 for this insurance plan, just based on insurance premiums that were recently released by the state for their plan. The cost for joining this collaborative is $10,000 in fiscal year 24, and it will be annually $10,000 going forward. For fiscal year 24, that cost is unbudgeted, and we are anticipating to be able to fund that through expenditure savings in the Human Resources Department. We've attached the memorandum of agreement for your approval, and it's already been reviewed by our legal department. So at this point, we need approval to join this collaborative so that they can begin the RFP process and solicit
It sounds
quotes.
like staff's on board with this, right?
Yes. We have concurrences from Kelsey Mace, our interim CFO, and concurrences from Kirk Denny, our county attorney.
I motion to approve.
Okay. I second, or I just have a question.
Either way, Wayne, go ahead, please.
So Michelle, it sounds like some of the list of reasons that would cover an employee for Time to Care Act might also coincide with FMLA.
Correct. So the Time to Care Act doesn't require employees to use their own leave, whereas FMLA requires employees to use their own available leave. So this would add to FMLA. So it could actually extend an employee's FMLA from 12 weeks to 24 weeks or even 36 weeks. They would be given an additional 12 weeks or 12 weeks of family insurance. What this insurance does is it ensures that employees are paid 66 2/3 of their income up to $1,000 per week during the time that they are on FMLA versus having unpaid leave. And it's per instance, not necessarily capped at 12 weeks per year, it's per instance.
Okay. So could you give us an example, not a real-life example, but of someone who may benefit the full 36 weeks?
So for example, if somebody gives birth to a child, and then maybe 10 months later, they decide they want to adopt a child. So they would have two instances there where they would be able to use 12 weeks for the birth of the child, 12 weeks for the adoption of a child, or foster care of a child. Other instances would be birth of a child, and then they perhaps have a family member develop cancer, so they would be able to use another 12 weeks for that family member that has cancer. So this could create instances, in very rare instances, where employees could use more than 12 weeks of FMLA.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
I think we had a motion and a second on the floor. Yes. All in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Thank you. Next item, FY '23 excess of revenue.
Good morning again, Commissioners. Kelsey Mace, Interim Chief Financial Officer. The FY '23 excess of revenues over expenditures in the general fund is approximately $25 million. The excess is the result of revenues being over budget by $13.8 million and expenses under budget by $11.2 million. I just want to remind you that it is best practice that excess funds be used for one-time costs and not ongoing operating costs. At this time, staff recommends putting $5 million into the pension fund and the remaining $20 million into the capital reserve fund for future use. This time I want to open it up to your comments.
And I've also just passed out to you revisions to our long-range or our 5-year projections so that you can get a better feel for where our revenue overages were.
Summarize it sort of.
Yes, I will.
That's the top reading here.
Okay, so in summary, income tax for fiscal year '23 ended at $121 million. That's actually a decrease from fiscal year '22 of $122.9 million. So we're actually starting to see decreases in our income tax revenue. Our budget for fiscal year '24 is $116.7 million. So although it's still a little bit lower than the $121 million, I think it's still in line with where we need to be for fiscal year '24. Recordation tax saw a high of $17.2 million in fiscal year '22. It decreased in fiscal year '23 to $9.9 million, and we've decreased it further in fiscal year '24 to $8.5 million. The biggest wild card that we saw in fiscal year '23 was interest earned. As the Fed Reserve has increased interest rates, so have our interest revenues been increased. So typically we receive about $600,000 in interest revenue, and you can see in fiscal year '21 and '22 we received $600,000 and $350,000. In fiscal year '23, we actually received $6.3 million in interest revenue. So that was something that we did not anticipate. The other place where we're seeing revenue changes are in operating grants. We hit a high in fiscal year '21 of $21.9 million. That decreased in '22 to $13.7 million, and even more in fiscal year '23 to $10.4 million. So we're starting to see reductions in our operating grants revenue. So those are the major changes that we saw in our revenues. I guess the last one would be real estate and personal property tax. We budgeted $134.9 million in real estate and personal property tax. It actually came in at $141 million. For fiscal year '24, we've budgeted $143.6 million, so we believe that that budget number is good and it doesn't need any adjusting. The wild card that we were seeing in real estate and personal property tax was actually for personal property tax. Real estate has been pretty steady. Personal property tax was seeing some gains as a result of the commercial growth that we're seeing in the county. So those are the major changes that we saw in real estate, in revenues. As far as changes that we saw on expenditure side, overtime wages were a little bit over budget at about 1.8 million over, but that's offset by reductions in full-time revenue. The biggest changes that we saw in expenditures being under budget were for our health insurance. We're self-insured for our health insurance, and in fiscal year '23, we had a very low claims experience year. So although we budgeted $10 million for health insurance, it only came in at $7.5 million. So that was the biggest reason why our expenditures were under budget. The next reason that we were under budgeted in expenditures has to do with operating grants. So as operating grant revenue didn't come in where we wanted it to be, that also means that operating grant expenditures didn't come in where we wanted it to be. So operating grants were about $6 million under budget for expenditures. Some of those expenditures will be recurring as departments weren't able to get grants. They're probably going to need to request those expenditures in fiscal year '25 or future years to replace those equipment or other types of things that they didn't get grant funding for. And then as far as our health insurance, as much as we received $2.5 million under due to our claims experience, we could have a bad year next year or the year after that. So we typically budget based on our normal history. We just had a good year in fiscal year '23. So those are the items that made up all of the variances for revenues and expenditures.
What do you think, if there was this is going to be sort of a stretch, but hypothetically, if you think there's going to be surprises, these are negative or positive in revenues, what is your projection for the near future?
For the near future, I believe that our projections for fiscal year '24 and '25 are pretty accurate based on our historical trends. I think in the near future, we're going to start seeing reductions in our personal property tax, probably in fiscal year '27. We'll also continue to see recordation tax decreasing. Although we received about $10 million in fiscal year '23, we're going to see that go back down to a normal of about $7 million by fiscal year '27. And then the other wild card would be interest earned. Although we got $6.3 million in revenue in fiscal year '23, that is going to go back down to our normal of $600,000 probably by fiscal year '27 or fiscal year '28. As soon as the Fed starts reducing that inflationary rate, that interest earned will start coming back down.
What was the interest earned from what investment, if you call it an investment?
It would be our cash reserves. We have.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's mostly in what types of investments?
I know some of it are in like treasury bills. And for the interest, just for a little bit of background, at the beginning of the fiscal year, we were investing at a 0.1% interest rate, and towards the end of the year, we were investing at around 5% interest rate.
So the mortgage rate and you're a realtor, Randy, you track this pretty closely, averaging now 8.117. So, and that's expected to continue to go up.
I would look for some of these real estate associated taxes revenue to start disappearing some, or reduction, even big buildings, homes. I think the economy is eventually going to slow it down. I actually am wrong, because I thought it would slow it down last year, and it has slowed it down some, but I think it can't keep up with those kind of interest rates. People just aren't going to, whether it be business, commercial, it's going to start. And you can ask some of your commercial people, they're starting to actually slow down now. They're catching up on their backlog. They've been very busy. So I think in the next 12 months, you'll see a change in those revenues coming in. But I don't know how much, it's just a crapshoot.
I think we're also going to see continued reductions in operating grants that are available to us. We saw the influx of stimulus funding, not only in the federal level, but the state level, but those grants opportunities are going to continue to decline.
I'm not painting a bleak picture here because, you know, we've been saying it's going to be off for 2 years and it keeps, you know, we keep getting revenue, but I think it's got to catch up sooner or later, I guess. And there was a statement made also that some of that revenue is from, and you might just said, and I might have missed it, is from projects that weren't done because the projects were came in over what was budgeted. Is that correct, or did I hear that?
Some of the expenditures that are under budget are a result of projects that weren't able to be done. If you look in our CIP, this doesn't include our CIP, but what we're starting to see in our CIP is that even though we've budgeted 100% cost inflation, we're actually seeing 180% cost inflation. For example, our detention center, we've included $17.5 million in our capital budget for that project. However, preliminary design and architectural engineering concepts that we're getting show that it's going to be $31 or $32 million. So we're starting to see 180% cost inflation in our CIP projects, which was not something that we had originally planned for.
So Michelle, just a quick question. Our expenditures that are under budget, health insurance was the biggest one you said, and I totally understand next year health expenses may be higher. We may have more employees relying on the health insurance program. The second item, you said the operating grants revenue, I guess the revenues didn't come in, so that project did not come to fruition.
Correct.
Okay. So what are the CIP projects? I think last time we met, which was 2 weeks ago, I suppose, you mentioned that you were just projecting that the largest line item was that we did not move forward with projects because inflationary expenses or the cost came in higher than what we anticipated. So we didn't do that. So it sounds like that's at the very least third on the list, not number one. What's an example of some of those projects that we did not do this year because the cost was too high?
That was just a preliminary guess. I don't have any specific examples of projects that we weren't able to do. Operating grant-wise, most of those projects that we weren't able to do included equipment and equipment purchases for departments, typically in our public safety areas, where we're not able to purchase needed equipment, vests, and different types of equipment. So those are the types of things that were deferred as a result of not getting those operating grants.
Vests, so vests for police officers
correct.
That we approved, we didn't.
I don't have specifics on examples.
I'd like to know, I mean, did we not buy vests for police officers? That because the grant didn't come through, I think that's important.
I'd have to get more information on which grants weren't approved.
Okay, I guess Mr. Matheny has left, but okay.
Yeah, we'll get more information on which grants weren't actually approved.
An example like that, if that didn't really happen.
Right, okay.
Could you tell me the 9.5% employee pay increase that we approved in December? How does that reflect in your budget?
It's reflected in our full-time wages and our overtime wages, all of our wages there, total wages. So our original budget was $44.9 million. Our final budget was $47.7 million, and our actual amount spent on total wages was $48.8 million. So that's reflected in the difference between our original and our final budget.
Okay. So, okay. So when you shared the $25 million amount that we have a surplus as a surplus, is that based on the original budget or the final budget with all the budget adjustments we made throughout the year?
It's based on our actual revenues. Our actual revenues were $301.9 million, and our total expenditures were $276.9 million, so the difference is $25.1 million.
Are you comparing your difference to what we originally budgeted, or does that difference include budget adjustments that we made throughout the year?
That difference would include budget adjustments made throughout the year.
Okay, so compared to what we originally budgeted, what's the difference?
Compared to what we originally budgeted, I believe for total revenues, it would be about a $13.8 million overage of revenues, and for expenditures, the remainder of that would be for expenditures that came in under budget of about 11.2 million, I believe. So revenues came in about 4.79% over budget. which
Over
is
the
with,
original budget or final budget?
of the final budget.
Okay, no, original
Right.
budget.
Let me jump in here, Wayne.
Please,
So variance to original budget for revenues was 39.1 million. However, in expenses, we were $14 million over original budget, which still nets to the same 25 million.
So budgeted revenues last year, just looking at revenues, not the expense side, Kelsey. Budgeted revenues, you say were $39 million more than what we originally budgeted?
Than our original budget, yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I've asked before, and you weren't here, Michelle, when I asked for this, so this is not directed at you in any way. I think it's important when we share numbers with our citizens, and I know in this case it comes out to the same, but when we're telling citizens that we were 13.8 million over revenue, that's not necessarily true on our budget, because we're looking at budget adjustments that we've had the privilege of all year long making changes to throughout the year for 12 months. But what we look at, what we originally forecast, that discrepancy is 39.1 million. And I just wonder how, if we had budgeted differently, maybe a little better, how our outlook on our expense plan might have played out. I think we need to look at that each time. I think that's important. The real number isn't 13.8, it's 39.1 million over in revenue.
But most of those revenue increases from the original budget to the final budget were in operating grants and charges for services. They weren't necessarily in real estate and income tax, which is where the majority of our revenue comes from.
But I think you have a budget, and making tweaks to it along the way just isn't a fair comparison to what we originally budgeted 12 months ago versus how we came in.
Well, but I think you need to put that into perspective. The majority of our budget is in total general revenue. It's made up of our real estate, personal property tax, income tax, admissions and amusement, recordation tax. The original budget for that was $252 million. The final budget for that was also $252 million. The variance comes from our program revenues, which is charges for services and operating grants.
But that's still money that comes in and benefits the citizens.
Correct. I just want to point out that the majority of the budget was budgeted
I just think it's
appropriately.
important. So we just went through the budget process a couple months ago. I say just went through. Time flies. But, you know, I'll be interested next year in seeing what we originally budgeted in May of this year, how things shake out to that budget, not the changes we make along the way. I think that's important.
If I could jump in here, I have a couple of observations, and, you know, I'm a subscriber to the Herald, and I read it every day. But I was shocked when I saw that headline that said the county had an extra $25 million, because we don't have an extra anything. I'll go back to that. I'll just explain why. We don't have extra because, you know, we borrowed $15 million to get through the year. So we are about $100 million short on funding our pension plans. The pension plans are a must-do. We should get up to that 85 to 90% category, and that's an obligation. And the only reason we're $100 million in the hole is because I believe that there were previous decisions made to not fund it and use some of that money that should have gone there to fund other things. And that's a judgment that the previous boards made, or to fund tax decreases. That's a previous decision. We also have, you know, significant increases coming up here in EMS and fire, and the compensation from Medicare for ambulance service calls and things is just not going to come in on the line that people are expecting. You know, capital expenditures for courthouses, the detention center, the Kerwin. I could go on. I'm just saying there's not extra, okay? Now, it's our job to figure out how to spend it. I think the team did a real good job in getting in to a ballpark area of where Mako says they should be, from a budget forecast, because you can't, it's not a crystal ball. It's tough, right, Kelsey?
It is.
It is. And macroeconomic factors and microeconomic factors both influence how this plays out. But the bottom line is, it's nice to have that pot of money. My observation is I would like us not to be borrowing money each year. I'd rather just paying down the debt. I'd like us to be doing some other things. But I think that's premature. I think we need to let this all soak in a little bit before we even discuss options.
So at a minimum today, just so that I can finalize our financial statements, is approval or not approval to leave $5 million in the general fund for pension or not, and moving the rest to the capital reserve. Funding that is moved into the capital reserve can be pulled back out per a vote of the board.
I'd motion to leave $5 million in put $5 million pension fund and the remaining $20 million in the capital reserve. I'd make a motion to do that for now.
If I could ask a question before.
Let me second for discussion.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I'd just like to ask a question about the motion. If the money is put into a capital fund, would that be accessible for allocating $2 million additional into agricultural reserve funds as a one-time expense?
If that's approved by the board by vote.
Okay, good.
And Kelsey, I think it sounds good, and I agree, we need to fund the pension. Has there been any impact on our pension fund, the balances, the value of any bonds or securities that may be invested based on rising interest rates? The market value of those securities have gone down?
Unfortunately for today, I don't have the actuarial report for this year to know where we ended as far as our net pension fund liability and our percent funded. Our investments throughout the year overall, I think, has us back to where we were prior to the stock market going down after the pandemic.
So if you recall, prior to the stock market going down, we lost about $22 million, and we've recovered that loss, so we're back to zero as far as loss or gains go.
Is our what vehicles is our pension invested in? Is it stocks, bonds, other municipal bonds? What do we invest in?
I'd have to bring back the investment. We just recently approved changes to that investment, to our investment plan, and we removed investment in Chinese companies. So we do have investments in, I'm sorry, I don't have that with me, but I can bring that for you.
There's a spectrum that we do invest in, and I can share that with you later today.
Do you think it would be appropriate before we made this decision to know those answers? We don't know what our pension is down. We don't know what those dollar amounts are. I'd like to know why $5 million. Maybe it should be 10. I don't know. But do you think those are answers that?
Well, at the end of fiscal year '22, our funded status was about it was about 68%. The average for governmental entities is 80%. The goal should be 99.9% or 100%. So at the end of fiscal year '22, we were at 68%.
Is that 99.9%? We had some information delivered to us a couple years ago when this question was first brought up.
The average
I don't want to
is
say first brought up,
right.
but when it was brought up just in recent years. And where our standings were compared to other counties in Maryland.
Right. To other counties in Maryland and other counties across the nation, where the average is 80%. So we're well below the average of other governmental agencies. The goal of all governmental agencies should be 100%, because that's actually the benchmark for private organizations.
And I'd like information on depending on what we are invested in, because interest rates have risen. If we're invested in bonds that are paying a lower interest rate, the market value on those bonds may have decreased. They'll pay par when they mature, or if interest rates start to go back down, the market value of those bonds will increase. But I'm curious, I'd like to see, I think it's important to know, maybe we're not invested in those types of securities, but that 68% may just be a sign of the higher interest rates, and things will work out as those bonds come closer to the maturity or par.
I would invest more in oil and gas, because that's going to go up.
Do we know what kind of dollar amount we're looking at between 68% and the 80% that's the average?
Probably 50 million.
I don't have that information with
Okay,
me.
I'm just curious, what would it take us to get from 68 to be with our peers?
Our net pension liability at the end of fiscal year '22 was over $100 million. So to get us to 100%, it would be about $110 million. To get us to 80%, I'm assuming it would be, since we're at 68%, it would be,
24, 25 million.
yeah, about $30 million.
You know, everybody knows we're low on our pension fund percentage-wise. At this point, I'm just gonna stick with put $5 million in for now and see what happens, and get more information that's been requested.
Could I ask if we, and I would support that, the money that we put into pension, we've taken from that in recent months, haven't we, Kelsey?
Yeah, some of the budget adjustments in '24 was reducing
Okay,
that
so I
pension.
want to make sure we're being true to our employees when we say we're putting this money into the pension. I'm sorry to say this, it's been used sometimes as a slush fund. I don't like that. I don't like that. So if we put this $5 million into the employee pension, will it stay in the employee pension?
Yes, we would actually transfer the cash into the fund once approved.
And not take it out.
And once it's in there, it's in there.
And what about for this current fiscal year that we're on now? Are there any more plans to use the employee pension fund, money that we have budgeted to go into the pension?
Not at this time.
I think we have a motion.
And a second.
And a second. Just a comment I would like to make, just for the record, I've given this a lot of thought, analyzed it the last few weeks, particularly while I was traveling. I had a lot of time to think about it. In the businessman part of me for 40 years, I call this profit, or I did when I ran a business. And my philosophy, just for the record, was always 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. What I mean by that is 8.4 million would be debt reduction or capital reserves. And as Commissioner Harvey had commented about, the borrowing that we do. 1/3 would be for the pension plan of our employees, 8.4 million. The other 8.4 million, in my mind, I would invest back in this community and for one-time needs. And i.e., and forgive me, because I know this is going to hit a sore spot, school board, water and sewer, and current capital needs. We all sit here and we know there's bridges, we know there's roads, we all get complaints. I mean, I had complaints Saturday morning at the Dargan breakfast about a road sinking and people fussing. So just for the record, that's where John Barr sits with these kind of discussions.
And I just want to echo that, capital needs are important, and that would be a one-time use of fund balance or reserves.
So Commissioner Brown, I'm intrigued by what you have to say. And I really wish we would have had some of this information. We're talking about $25 million. That's a lot of money. Are you supportive of the motion that's on the floor, or would you like more time to think and talk about this?
I would like to have further discussion amongst us.
Well, even if we vote this, we can come back and do this.
You can make changes later. During the budget process, you can make
I can
changes.
entertain your suggestions later. This isn't locked in stone if we
No.
pass it.
What about if an additional contribution needs to be made to the employee pension, removing that
We
from
can pull it
CIP?
back out of that 20 million. Yes. This is just our recommendation, really, whether it's pension or not, this is my recommendation of what we should leave in the general fund and what we should move out into the capital
So you need this to
fund.
close the books?
Yes.
But what happens if in a week or two we have more discussion and the books are already
It would be a
closed?
24 budget adjustment. And we would do the transfer back in 24.
And that is, we can do that.
Yes.
And legally, we can bring it back before the board
With a majority, correct.
with the majority. All right. Well, I still would like to, I'm just concerned that, number one, the pension plan, I'd like to slowly try to get that back to where it needs to be.
And we don't have the final numbers from our actuary yet, which is why we don't have we don't have recent information.
I would like to know if our market value of the pension fund was affected in any way with the increasing in interest rates.
Yeah.
I think many people that have a 401k have seen that as their interest rates have risen, the value of the 401ks have declined. And that's kind of what we're talking about at this level too. I think it would be important to see that. I don't think we've had a long enough conversation on $25 million. I'd like to have further discussion. I would support moving forward. I agree with some of what Commissioner Barr said in terms of supporting some additional capital to education. And I know this is on the operating side, but I still support additional funding to the Commission on Aging as well. And part of what frustrates me, and I think I give Commissioner Harvey the benefit because he wasn't here, but last year we talked about a 17 million excess and how that was an anomaly. That wasn't going to happen again. The year before that, we saw 40 plus, excuse me, my memory doesn't, I don't quite recall the number, but it was $40+ million surplus. That was an anomaly. It's not going to happen again. We just see it happening again, and I'm concerned about that. So I would like more discussion. I think we're moving in the right direction with this year's surplus, but I'd like more discussion.
Okay, we have
I think we're going to have more discussion.
Yeah, that doesn't mean it's the end. This is just for her, for us right now.
Good.
So I suggest call for the vote.
Okay, we ready?
Yep.
Motion and second, all in favor by saying aye.
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 Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to go into closed session.
Motion to go into closed session.
Motion second. Okay, we're in closed session. Let's take a lunch recess. Unless you're a Campbell.